Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to the channel. Hope everyone is doing well. Let's go ahead and begin episode 15 of our YouTube app series tutorial. Now, I've been really looking forward to recording this video because one of my favorite things to do in programming is to actually perform refactoring. And we are going to refactor our application, our YouTube app, to reduce the number of lines of code inside of our program. So let's go ahead and start by taking a look at the simulator here. And let's just bring it to the center. The last episode, we were able to actually integrate all of these different app feeds inside of our application. We have the trending, subscription, and the home feed. And if I shrink this guy, bring it to the corner, and take a look at the code inside of Xcode here, and all of these feeds are fetched via these different fetch calls, all hitting home JSON, trending JSON, and subscription JSON. All of these methods call this base function here, which gets the JSON and parses it down using this dictionary here. And I want to actually tell you that I can reduce this entire chunk here, so this entire chunk here, to about 5 lines of code. So I'm going to show you the magic and kind of my bag of tricks when dealing with JSON. So I'm going to simply copy this down here and just make a reference as to what I want to do. So I'm going to comment all that out and show you the difference at the very end of this video on how I can reduce all of this into just a few lines. So how do I go about doing this? And the trick here is I want to first take a look at my JSON file right here. So the home JSON file looks kind of like this. It's pointing to my own server, but here's what it looks like. We have a bunch of dictionaries right here inside of this entire array. And inside this dictionary, we have these properties with these values on it. So one thing that we're missing inside of our current application is this actual number of views object here inside of these cells. So to actually get the number of views, we would have to introduce another setter in this dictionary for, in addition to title, thumbnail, image, name, we would have to set video dot number of views equals dictionary, and you can see me typing in this key here, number of views, as string like that. So if we run the application again, let's see, I think this needs to be as ns number. So ns number, run the application, the app will render and everything looks almost the same except for the number of views right here, 300 million and 92 million, 52 million, and so on and so forth. So this is how you would manually set up all your properties with these values. And if you've been watching my Firebase tutorial series, you'll know that I actually prefer to call a function called setValues instead. So I'm going to call video.setValues for keys with dictionary, and this takes in this dictionary object up here. So instead of performing these 3 lines of code, I've shrunk it down to one single line like this. But however, if the keys in your dictionary don't match up with your properties inside of your model class, you experience this crash right here, where it says that the class is not key value coding compliant for the key of duration. What this means is your video class is actually missing this duration value, so var duration of ns number. And this duration is this property right here, this 210 property with value of 210. And then if you run the application again, you'll get another crash. This time it's referring to the actual thumbnail image name. So thumbnail image name, you'll notice that the case of the key right here is actually using the underscore case, which means that if we go back to video.swift and change this to this thumbnail image name, we should be okay. And if we run the application again, it'll get another crash because of the underscore casing for a number of views. So let's change that as well. And because we've changed these property names, the compiler will actually tell us to change the actual properties as well. So let's just go in here and change these couple of properties to what they are now. And running the application, our feeds will render correctly. So that's what this looks like. And if we go back to the API service where all of this code is kind of living right now, we can simply remove this entire bit of comment, and we've reduced all of this to this one function call called set values for keys to the dictionary. Now, one thing I want to mention about this style of setting up your model objects is that every time you introduce a new property inside of your JSON file, it has the potential of crashing your application. For example, if you introduce in your JSON file a number of likes or number of comments for each video, it's going to crash it if you don't have this, for example, num likes variable, right? If you don't have this, your application will crash. So I'm going to show you guys also how to prevent this crash a little bit later on. But instead now I want to actually perform the same optimization to this channel dictionary object where we set up the channel and then we set video channel equal to this channel here. So the trick is to actually call, channel like that, and call set values for keys of the dictionary with this channel dictionary object instead, which is right here. This means we can comment out this code right here. If we run this, we'll run into the exact same problem where profile image name is not the right casing. So you can see this profile image name is actually this right here inside of the channel dictionary. If you go back to our code, go to video.swift, you can just change that to profile image name and paste that in there. And run the application now, you should be good to go. So let's see how this looks like for the channel information down here. You see the profile image name for the channel renders out correctly, and also the name of the channel, Kanye Lover, Taylor Fan Forever. Those are the channel properties. Let's go back to API service here. And let's just remove those two lines of code. All right. And what this means is I've kind of reduced all the setters to just a couple of lines, this and that. And now, what if I told you I can reduce this even further by removing all of these lines right here? And the trick is to actually look into video.swift and override a method which gets executed every time a value is being set with a key in the dictionary. So that method is actually called, let's see, let me just get rid of this perhaps. This method is called set value for a key right here. And if you call super set value for key with the same exact parameters, you get the exact same functionality. However, you now have control on what happens with the actual keys. So with the actual keys inside of set value. So if I run this application again and just kind of ignore that crash for now, I'll fix that in just a bit. So if you take a look at what happens with the setter, we actually call set key or set value with this key of title. And inside of value, if we print this out, you get this Taylor Swift, I knew you were trouble, which is exactly what this is. So what happens is you hit the continue button again, self is actually set with the title of this value. And because channel is a entire different object right now, we can actually override what happens when we hit the key of channels. In other words, if we say if key equals this channel, we can call some custom code. So custom channel setup. And if it is any other key, we'll just call the good old superset value. So that's how this would all work. If you run the code now, you're gonna see the application no longer crashes. So everything looks okay. However, the channel information is now not set up properly. If we go back to API service, we can actually take all of this. Let me just uncomment that, cut that, go back to video.swift. And if I paste this in here, let's see, I paste it in here, right? I can actually modify it so that the setup work occurs inside of video instead of the API service. So to do this, I can actually remove this entire line. Well, let me just do this step by step. So channel dictionary is actually this value object here. So value is actually the entire channel dictionary. And if we, for example, whenever we set value for the key of channel, we set this entire dictionary with the value instead. So that's how this value works. And if I go inside of here, I can say video.channel is actually self.channel equals channel like that. So that's how that would work. So if we run the application now, we can put a breakpoint here and see what happens every time the channel gets hit. So key is title, so that's not it. The next key is channel, so I'm going to hit F6 to step in. And you see that this channel dictionary, or this value right here, if I just print it out, is actually the Taylor Fan Forever with profile image name, just like it says right here. So that's how that works. If I hit continue, let's see, if I hit this breakpoint here, we set up all the objects on channel, which is down here, and we get the name and the profile image name. And self.channel, if I hit F6 one more time, will become that channel object right above. So that's how that works, and everything is going to look okay. The moment I hit continue, the channel information comes back. So that's how this works right here. If I wanted to reduce this further down, I can do this right here. Instead of saying channel equals new channel, why don't I just say self.channel is this new channel? And then I can remove this line of code right now because we no longer need to reset this channel object. And finally, channel right here can actually say optional channel. So this just refers to self channel. You don't really need the self, but perhaps this is a little more obvious as to what the setting is doing. Anyhow, if I wanted to get rid of this line right here, you can just move this guy down in this channel dictionary object there. And you have pretty much changed everything into just 2 lines of code. So that's how you would do further reduction of code inside of here. Now you can kind of see how, let's see, removing these spaces, how much we've already reduced this from this entire thing here. So what else can we do? What else can we do? The next bit of reduction I want to actually introduce is this line right here. I want to kind of get rid of. And to get rid of this line, I will introduce a constructor on video that takes in this dictionary object. In other words, if I go to video.swift, I will provide an initializer like this that takes in a dictionary of a type string to any object like that and call super.init because we just need to initialize the object. And next, I'll call set values for keys of the dictionary inside of this constructor instead with the dictionary from the parameter of the construction. And finally, inside of API service, we need to use this constructor of dictionary. So if I type that dictionary, and we'll use this dictionary object from this iteration of this for loop right here. So what that means is I can run the application now with my code further reduced, and everything looks the same, which means I've saved 1 line of code by moving it into this video object. Okay, so that's good. That's good. And what else can I do to reduce this even further? Well, the one thing I want to talk about first is the unsafe unwrapping of this object here and this object here. So every time I see a bang, I get really worried as to why that's there. So to fix this data bang, I guess the error is if data is nil and you try to unwrap it like this, your app will crash. So to prevent the crash, you can actually say something like this. You can say if let's see, unwrapped data equals data, like so. You can actually put all of this inside of this block instead. And then you can access, instead of data bang, you can just access unwrapped data. So that's how that will work. And that removes one unwrapping. How do I fix this unwrapping here now? Well, it's pretty easy if I change what this JSON dictionary is casted into in here instead. So if I cast it down to an as optional to an array of, let's see, this entire structure here, and I'll paste it there. So that's what that is, right? And how I want to access this JSON value is going to modify a little bit. So instead of JSON, I'm going to call it JSON dictionaries, which is what it really is. And JSON dictionaries basically is this entire structure here, which contains an array of these JSON dictionary guys. And here is what I want to do. I want to actually say if let JSON dictionaries, if this casting is proper, we will enter into this brace right here. Okay, what this means is I can actually cut all of this code here, paste it in there, and I no longer need to cast this down as an array of dictionaries. I can just remove it, and our casting is safely done via this as optional. So this has really no way of crashing in our app now. Okay, so what do I get from this? Well, if I wanted to reduce this unwrapping to perhaps one line of code, I can cut all of this here. I can cut this, put a comma here, paste all that code, and we can remove one layer of if case bracing. So if I cut all that code, let's see, remove this right here and paste. Now my code is a little cleaner and the unwrapping is a lot safer. So that's one thing I wanted to take care of first. And the question now is, how can I reduce this into one line of code? Okay, so I'm just going to comment out this for now. And I'm going to show you the magic behind Swift and these higher order functions by creating a videos array by this reference here. Let videos equal, see, JSON dictionaries, which is an array of dictionary objects, right? It's an array of string to any object dictionaries. And in here, I'm just going to call map and brace, open brace, closing brace. And in here, I will return video like this, dictionary constructor. Let's see, the lowercase d. And then in here, I want to just use the value of $0. So let me run this application now to prove to you that this still works, and then I'll tell you why this works. So everything looks fine. All of our feeds look okay. And now I can remove all of that. So that's kind of what our code has turned into. So I'll leave this up just so you guys can see what it's doing. But anyways, the mapping function here works like this. I'm gonna give you a quick example with numbers array equals 1, 2, and 3. And if I create another array, let's see, let doubled numbers array equals numbers array dot map. And inside of here, if I return $0, and if I just print out doubled numbers array, the console will show you what this doubled numbers array is. It's simply 1, 2, 3, right? So I think this is a let here. If we return $times 2, we'll get the values of this array doubled each time for each one of these indices. And that's what that looks like. So not so bad. And if I want to turn these values into something completely different, for example, a string. So for example, let's say strings array equals numbers array dot map. And inside of here, we return a string interpolation instead with the value of, let's say, $0 times 2. Let's now print out strings array. So this is going to construct a string of all of these numbers multiplied by 2, and we get string 2, string 4, and string 6. So that's kind of how a mapping function works. Essentially, let me just comment out this line of code first. See how can I comment that out? There? Yeah, there we go. And the mapping pretty much takes each one of the elements inside of your array, it modifies it with whatever you return, and then it places it into a different array and returns that entire set to the reference that you're setting it to. So that's how map works. Make sure to do some additional research on Google if you want to dive deeper. So anyways, with all of this code commented out, someone's commented out there, this mapping function takes in this dictionary from this array here, and we construct these video objects with this constructor. And let me just remove the project navigator. And then very similarly, we return an entire array of videos via this block right here. So that's how the mapping function works. And if I really wanted to reduce this even further, I can take this entire video's reference and just put it inside of this right here. Finally, removing that. And let me just cut this out and put this perhaps all the way down here instead. So that's where the comment is going to live. And finally, we have just a couple of lines of code. If you take a look at this carefully, I would probably count this as 2 lines, right? First, we unwrap the data, and then we unwrap the JSON as an array of dictionaries like this. And then we call this dispatch async with, I guess, 2 parameters, the main queue parameter, and then the completion block of the actual videos array. So that probably counts as 2 or 3 lines. And altogether, this is roughly maybe 4 to 6 lines of code perhaps, but it's definitely reduced compared to all of this. So what is this, 55 to 78? That's about 23 lines of confusing, complicated code. And this right here does all the work for you from 39 to 44, roughly 5 lines of code. And you also get the advantage of having your properties set up for you instead of having to manually set up, for example, the title, thumbnail, image name, number of views, and all that good stuff gets set for you inside of set values for keys with dictionary. Okay, so now that you guys have seen how to optimize your code to make it a little bit more compact, let's take a look at how we would prevent the crashing of the set values for keys with dictionary. Whenever we call that, if we introduce a new property on video called number of likes, the application actually crashes. So I've set up this file on AWS S3 called home number of likes right here, this JSON file. And changing the API service to fetch this JSON file instead, I'm going to show you the crash that occurs based on this number of likes key inside of my app by running it. And looking at the console right here, we have this crash due to number of likes. Now to fix this is a little bit tricky, I have to admit, but the idea is we can actually catch the setting of this value based on that key inside of this set value method inside of a video. So what we do is we actually test if the class is responsive to this setter. And to do this, we actually create a selector like this. And this will be NSString or NSSelector from string. And we'll use this selector inside of this variable right here. If, let's say, let response equals self.responds to selector, and we'll use this selector guy from right above. The question now is, what is inside of this selector name string? Well, I'm going to show you an example with set title colon like so. I'm going to run the application to show you what this response variable is the moment I enter this breakpoint right here. So response is true because when you call set title, it actually calls set title for this property. That's why it actually responds to it. Now, this entire respond actually returns a, let's see, number of likes, I believe this property is called. Whenever we run this selector for set number of likes, this variable response is actually false down here. So the trick is to actually construct this selector string into whatever the bad property is, for example, number of likes. And we do that with this key property here, which is currently title. And whenever it is this number of likes, we will kind of tell the setter to avoid all of this code down here. So I'm just going to show you how to do that really quick by first constructing the string that represents this chunk of this setter right here. And first I want to get the capitalized first character of this key. So for example, the N in this case will be let, let's see, uppercase, perhaps uppercased first character equals key.characters.first will give me the first character. And if I wrap this with a string like that, I can call uppercase string. So if I run this application now, I'm going to show you what this uppercase character is in the debugger. It gives me this optional thing right here, optional T. And the reason why it's optional is because I have to unwrap this first character like that. And then we will get something more usable in terms of this setter string right here. So I am going to see uppercase first character is a capital T, and for this number of likes it is this capital N. Okay, so eventually I want to say something like this. If, let me just put another line right there. So if it doesn't respond to that selector, I just want to return outside of this entire function. That's what I want to do. See, responds right there. Now, the remaining bit of the implementation is to actually construct this entire bit into a string as well. So what I can do is I can actually say let selector string equals let's see, key, let's see, replace, let's see, string by replacing characters in range with some kind of range value, and this will be this uppercase string. So basically I'm going to return, or I'm going to replace the first character of this key string of number of likes with the capital N. And here's what I'm going to do. I need to actually make this range here, and this range will be let range equals key.start index, I think. And let's see, it will also be key.start index advanced by 0. So that's what this range value is. Essentially it's the very first index, and you advance it by, I guess, 0, which means to get to the first character. And if we put a range in here, I'm going to show you what this selector string looks like when I run the application. So it'll be clear once we see what that value is. So selector string is actually this capital T and title, which means that if I run this one more time, you get this capital number of likes. I can actually replace this entire thing with the selector string through string interpolation with selector string like that. And then if I run this application now, let's take a look at what responds value actually is. So if I look at responds, in the case of the title key, it returns a value of true. And if I take a look at responds for the key of number of likes, responds is actually false. So it's going to enter into this return right here by hitting F6, returns out. And the rest of the keys are actually fine. And the crash actually goes away even after we've introduced this property here. Now you can imagine the JSON file actually should contain a lot more properties, which will cause your app to crash. But this catch right here will actually force it to just exit out of the value setter, preventing the crash upon calling superset value. So that's how you would catch these new properties in your model objects. And to make this catch available for all your model objects, for example, this channel object as well, all you have to do is you want to copy this code here, introduce a new class, perhaps call it safe JSON object, subclass it as NS object, like so. You want to override set value in this class and call, let's see, paste all that code I just copied in here for the selector stuff. And in here you call set value for value and key. So now that you have this, I actually want to call super set value. With this in place, I can actually replace all of this with just a backspace. So I'm going to backspace like this, and I'm going to subclass this video object as this safe JSON object instead. So that looks pretty good. And I can also subclass channel as safe JSON object. So having done all that, it's going to try to set the number of likes variable via this superset call. And then it goes in here. And pretty much, if I put a breakpoint there, I'm going to show you exactly what the chain of method calls will look like. So whenever it hits this return value, we are going to go up one method, and whenever we're in video set value, the number of likes is the actual key here. And whenever we are in that key, it goes into superset value, which will go inside of this method here. And it doesn't respond, so we just immediately exit out of the loop or out of the setter chain. And that's why the application still works without the crash. All right, that's going to wrap it up for today. Hopefully you found today's content helpful and useful in terms of improving your coding with Swift. Make sure to hit that like button and also subscribe to this channel to stay tuned for the rest of the YouTube series. All right, in the next episode, let's take a look at how to implement a player that we can launch to play the actual video files that we have on the internet. Pretty exciting stuff, so I hope you guys stay tuned for that. And furthermore, if you want to download the project for today's video lesson, you can click on the download link above. Follow me on Twitter at buildthatApp. Finally, if you want to learn more about iOS development, click on the 3 playlist links on the bottom to get even better at iOS programming. That's about it, guys. Keep on coding, and I'll see you next time.